year, and then Andrew to my immediate left on that. So it'll be great to hear from the students and their experiences of what they've done about study abroad while they've been here as students at Providence College. I'm just going to say a few comments about that. Is that we have 225 students on study abroad this fall, another 180 going abroad in the spring. So a record number of students this year will be approximately 400, plus summer, other short-term programs, course-embedded programs, spring break programs, and courses that we run in May, which we call Maymester programs. So a variety of options. If a semester doesn't work for you, we can help your student find another option that will. There's a brochure on the way in. I hope you grabbed one, if not on the way out. This will probably answer 90-95% of the questions you have about how study abroad works here at PC. So hold on to this. It will be a great reference for you. And also this information is all on our website as well, so you can easily reference it there as well on that. So that's all I'm going to say at the outset, because I think it's far better. Well, let me ask a question first. This is for the parents. How many of you studied abroad, lived, or worked abroad? Pretty good number. Small number. How many of you wish you had? Yeah, me too. I didn't get to do that when I was in college, but I've been making up for it ever since. So, and I trust that the reason you're here is that your son or daughter is really keen and interested about studying abroad. And so I hope that's the case. We will work with them. This is great. It's a great time to start early, because you want to make sure you choose your courses well, so that when the semester you go, you won't have any difficulty finding courses that you need or making that fit in under your 4-year plan so that you graduate on time. And we're very careful about making sure that students graduate on time in the 4 years that they're here. The other thing I should mention is that a shift has taken place really in study abroad here at PC, is that we are trying to more and more encourage students to do programs that really fit in well with their major. So they do coursework abroad, whether you're a business major or a philosophy major or economics major, that you'll do coursework that is fitted well with the major, so you're not just doing things like general elects or free elects, but things that will fit in well to help you prepare you for your post-grad opportunities, be that in the work world, business world, or graduate study opportunities, or wherever your sojourns may take you. So we're really trying to integrate that to make one part of another semester as part of your academic curriculum here at the college. And we've really worked hard on that. And you'll hear that from the students here this morning in terms of their own study abroad journeys with that. So let me turn that over to Taylor to get underway.
Hi, everyone. I'm going to take this out, actually, if that's going to do that. Give me 1 second to get my PowerPoint up. Awesome. Okay. Sorry, Dean Adrian. Thanks so much to Dean Adrian for having us here this morning. As you guys will hopefully see throughout these 3 presentations, there's nothing that global ambassadors love more than to talk about their study abroad experience. I think I can speak for the 3 of us that it's one of the most important parts of our PC experience thus far, and that's why I'm going to need them to cut me off when it's time for me to stop speaking. And I'm also going to talk a little bit about academics today, but I might interrupt myself to talk about the photos that you have up here. And I love questions, so if at any point you want to shoot your hand up and say, Taylor, what's that a picture of, or what are you doing there? I would love that. I want this to be active and dynamic, and I really want to hear about what you guys want to know about. So welcome. Again, my name's Taylor Gibson, and I am a senior member of the class of 2017. Every time I say that, it freaks me out a little bit. It still feels new. And my majors here at Providence College are political science and Spanish, and I also have a minor in Latin American studies. And so I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how I chose my program and why it fit in so well with what I study here at PC. First, I'm going to talk about why study abroad. What's the benefit of study abroad? And I think for me, one of the most important things is that it just expands your worldview in ways that you could never imagine. It also helps you develop a sense of cross-cultural sensitivity, which in an increasingly globalized workforce, that's an invaluable tool that we want all of our PC graduates to have when they're entering their career paths. And I also wanted to let everyone know, it says this in your brochure, that anyone can study abroad, and I really want to emphasize that because something I'm so proud of PC is the huge number of students we actually send abroad each year. I think, Denise, correct me if I'm wrong, we're at like 33%, even higher, upwards to that. And in terms of the national average, we blow everyone out of the water. And that's something I'm super proud of and I want to continue. And so even for people in the STEM fields who sometimes feel that their schedule is super constrained and they might not have the flexibility to go abroad, really anyone can do it with the proper planning. And so the fact that all of you are here so early is a step in the right direction. And that means that hopefully most of you will be able to do so. So your 3 options for study abroad are your semester abroad, your summer study abroad, and your faculty-led study abroad, like a Maymester. And so what I'm going to talk about is my semester abroad in Lima, Peru. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about how you go about studying or selecting your program. And so like I said, I am a Latin American Studies minor, and for that reason, I knew I wanted to go to Latin America to study. I'm also a Spanish major, so I knew that staying in a homestay was something that was very important to me. And that's actually an option in many of the programs that I was looking at. But another thing that was very important to me was this thing called direct enrollment in classes. And what that means is that you are able to take classes alongside native students in that country. And so I knew that for me, something that would be so important would be forming relationships in a classroom with students my age and learning alongside them. And so in picking my program, that was something that I really looked for. And so I ended up with a program called CIEE, and there was a lot of benefits of this program, one of which was that we got to go 2 weeks early before the year started, and I took a 4-credit course called Intensive Spanish Preparation. And what that looked like was we had a professor from the university where I studied come in, and every day from 9 to 5 for the first 2 weeks, she did a full course load of what she thought we needed in order to be successful students in our direct enrollment classes. And so every day we would do reading, writing, and speaking exercises. And that was so important for me because as someone who studies Spanish in my university setting, I still wasn't sure that I had the tools that I needed to succeed in a classroom competing with people who were my age at such a sophisticated level, university level. And so that class, not only was I able to get credit for a full course in my Spanish major at PC, but I also went into the school year feeling much more confident about my capabilities, about participating in a seminar setting where Spanish was my second language. And that was one of the aspects of my program that was most important and most beneficial to me. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about my majors and how they corresponded to classes that I then took in Peru. Something that's important to note is that all of your classes that you take abroad factor into your GPA upon your arrival back at PC. And so academics are something that you have to take very seriously, both while you're at PC and while you're abroad. One option that you can utilize is you can take a one pass-fail course while you're abroad. And so I actually utilized that option because I wanted to take a class that wasn't exactly related to my major. And I ended up taking it as part of my core focus. And so those are good options that we offer here. Another important part of the academic process was that we have to have our courses pre-approved before your departure to your host country. And so what that means is that I had to go online to my university and look at what courses they offered and see, these are courses that I need to fulfill in my own major, and this is what I'm looking for. So for example, in Spanish class, I had to take an elective course. And so I looked on my university's website and I found some courses. All of them were offered in Spanish, obviously, and I said, this is something that I'm interested in taking. Then I sent the syllabi over to our study abroad office, and they took a look at it and said, yes, I'm going to send this to your department head, and I think that this is going to work with your major. So that's a very useful and important part of the process because you want to make sure that while you're abroad, you're taking classes that will help you graduate. They're not going to be courses that are going to put you behind. You want to be taking things that are going to be factored into your degree that you need to graduate and that are part of your program here back at PC. So like I said, my program was extremely special in the fact that we had the opportunity to direct enroll in classes. But we also had the opportunity to take classes with just people that were in my program. So like I said, my program was called CIEE. And the benefit to have classes with just my CIEE students was that it was a small group setting. It was people who I was very intimately connected with because they were the people that I was traveling with. They were my fellow Americans who were from all over the country, who we kind of developed that special bond that was so important then when we went into our direct enrollment classes. And the classes that my program offered were extremely interesting and things that counted towards my major. So for example, I told you about the intensive Spanish that we took 2 weeks prior to our university enrollment. We also took a course called Understanding Peru, Race, Gender, Class, and Cultural Diversity. And that was taught by a professor at my host university. And he taught this program every year with CIE students. And it was so helpful for us in understanding the culture that we became immersed with. So we were learning about Peru historically, but also with a focus on how that was going to help us in our cultural immersion while we were there. We touched on contemporary issues like protests that we were seeing while we were walking the streets of Lima. We learned a lot about gender, which was particularly important for the female American students as we were experiencing things that we didn't always see while we were in the United States. We compared issues of race in terms of how is it similar and how is it different to race issues we see in the United States. So that was a class we enjoyed a lot, and it ended up counting as my Spanish free elective that I was telling you guys about because it was conducted in Spanish. Another course that was fantastic that was offered by our program was called Intercultural Communication and Leadership. And that was kind of going back to what I was talking about why it's so important to study abroad. What that class did was, one of the main projects we had was that we had to choose a Peruvian partner. And throughout the year, we worked on that partner in different activities. And they were really these activities that were intended to help us get to know each other on a deeper level. And the reason why that was so impactful and important was because we were communicating in our second language and trying to convey to the other person who we are and what that means. And it was just a really cool experience. I'll tell you a little bit about my partner. I actually joined CrossFit while I was in Peru. I was trying to find a way to work out while I was abroad, keep off those pounds that my host mom was putting on me. And so I had a partner from my gym who I was speaking with every day and doing my homework with for this class. And it helped us understand how to form relationships with people who are from different cultures. And that's a life skill that all of us are obviously going to take with us upon leaving the program. So those are the classes that I took within CIE. And I also took direct enrollment courses. And these courses were unbelievable. I took Gender and Politics and Democratic Theory. And for both of my classes, what was so interesting to me and what I think is a lot different than what we work on in the United States in terms of at least Providence College in my experience, was that I had 2 major 40-page papers due in each of these classes at the end of the year that you worked on with a partner. And I think that was such a formative experience for me because it helped me develop like teamwork skills with a person who was my age, who I then eventually became very good friends with, and they were instruments into how I enveloped myself in the culture. I went to movies with them, I went to dinner with them, we went to concerts together, and so not only were we working on schoolwork, but we also became really good friends. I'll tell you a little bit about the 2 papers and what I wrote about. So Democratic Theory obviously counted as a theory course in my poli-sci degree, and one of the things we studied were an interesting quota system that Peru has at their congressional level. And so what that means is that they have a quota, like a percentile, for the number of women and the number of indigenous people that they need to have on the ballot each year in their congressional elections. And so that was such an interesting concept for me because it's something that we don't have in our US political system. And so to kind of see that other form of government and how it functions and the advantages and disadvantages in Peruvian society was really interesting for me. Gender and Politics was also a very cool course. I worked on a project on clandestine abortions there, and that was also something that just provides a different perspective, and you get to see how the healthcare system works in another country, and so those lessons were definitely not only how to write a 40-page paper in my second language, but also how to work with a partner on those. Another part of my week that was important and counted for credit was my volunteer experience that I had when I was abroad. I worked in a Spanish nonprofit that was called SEDEC, which is a full day. How am I doing on time? Sorry guys, I could talk about this forever. Yeah, I'll wrap it up, yeah. So basically my internship counted for credit. It was great for poli-sci. It was an experience that I learned how to teach in a different in a different education system. That was counted for my degree, also very cool. Yeah, so here's the breakdown of how my courses counted. So I used these 3 classes to count as a Spanish elective, and my other 2 politics classes that were direct enrollment counted towards my political science degree. Yeah, do we have any questions about any of that? No? Okay, thank you guys.
Hello, my name is Hannah Cirilla. I am a senior here at Providence College. I'm a global studies major. Through my global studies major, we are actually required to study abroad. At the end of my freshman year, though, I decided that I wanted to study abroad for 2 semesters instead of just 1. So I started that planning process pretty early, so it's exciting to see people here now thinking about the process itself. I was really looking for programs that would fit into my interests, and that is how I came up with these 2 programs here. So the first program that I took part in was called Health and Community, Globalization, Culture, and Care, and the second program was Global Health and Developmental Policy. Both of these programs were through SIT, which is School for International Training, so they have some similar backgrounds to them, but I'll talk a little bit about the services that they both provided and the homestays that I had through both. My first program, we started in Washington, D.C. for 2 weeks, and then we traveled to India, South Africa, and Brazil for each about a month, and we stayed in homestays in each country. And then my second program, we were in Switzerland for the majority of the semester, and we had an excursion to Morocco where I also stayed in a homestay. So in terms of support, both of my programs really set us up really well with our homestays. For the first program, the IHP program, which is the multiple country program, I stayed always with another student from my program because we were in and out of each homestay for like a short period of time. So it was very quick, so we always had at least one person from our program with us to make this a little bit easier and also to add comfort for us. So through this program, they really placed us in different homestays based on who we were living with and what the accommodations were. And for my second program, most of the accommodations were based on a survey that we filled out and the host families filled out, and they try and match to the best of their ability what the host family is looking for and also what the student is looking for. So both programs provided different supports. I had orientation in all of my different countries, which helped kind of get to know like the climate and what really the context was that we were walking into. There was on-call emergency support for both programs, which is an important aspect. If there's ever a problem, we always had someone to call, someone who would help. Fortunately, through all of my homestay experiences, I really didn't have any problems. That's not the case for everybody, but both of the programs were really willing to work with the students and the host families to make sure that all of the accommodations worked best for all parties. So my first homestay was in India. I had 2 roommates. One was my direct roommate, and one we just shared the homestay. We lived with a host mother and a host father. So listed on all of these slides are going to be a little bit of information about each homestay, but I probably won't talk about everything, just kind of the general experience. So in my first homestay, they didn't speak much English, which was very intimidating for me. It's something that I had never experienced before, and I was very nervous for. However, it turned out to be an incredible experience because we learned to communicate in different ways without spoken language. We bonded over Indian soap operas, even though we had no idea what they were saying. We were able to watch and follow along every day after school. Oftentimes, we would watch while we were eating dinner. Our host family was kind enough to take us to different places in the city that they loved. In the picture that is on the slide, we went to their place of worship, so that was a very special experience to share with them. In terms of commuting to class, it was actually a bit of a process in India. We had to walk from our homestay to the main road to get a rickshaw. We took a rickshaw to the metro. We took the metro to the neighborhood where the classroom was in, and then a rickshaw from the metro to the classroom. So it was a bit exhausting, and India itself is a sensory overload, so it was kind of a long process, but it was very interesting because it allowed me to explore and navigate a new city in a foreign country. So my second homestay that I went to was in Zwelithamba, South Africa. This is in a rural area in the Western Cape, a historically black township. So there's a lot of history there, especially with like the effects of apartheid that are still, that you can still see now. I had 2 direct roommates, and we had a host mother, and we lived with her grandchildren, and they were actually on school break while we stayed with them, so they were around a lot, and it was absolutely wonderful to get to know them and play with them. We did a lot of dancing and singing and making friendship bracelets, and we actually cooked for our host family one of the nights, and it turned out to be a complete disaster, but we were all able to laugh about it and really enjoy the experience together. And I can only think of great memories with this homestay. I think of them actually quite often, even though I was only there for about 9 days. So my next homestay in also South Africa, we were in the Bo-Kaap in Cape Town, which is a Muslim neighborhood. I lived with one roommate, and we lived with a host mom and a host brother who both spoke English. So this was the first time that I was really able to utilize conversations with my host family, because it was the first time we shared a strong common language. In the past, there was small conversations that would happen, but this was the first time that I could really sit down and talk about many different things. We lived on Signal Hill, which was really cool. It's attached to Lion's Head and gives you a great view of Table Mountain, which you can kind of see like a little bit over there in the bottom picture. Absolutely incredible. However, it's on a huge hill. So walking to class and walking back from class was a hike itself. So like that was an experience. However, I loved living with this host family because we bonded over watching rugby, which I had never experienced much before going there, but South Africa's games were always on, so we always watched it together, and it was an incredible experience. We all kind of had our favorite players, so we would sit in my host mom's bedroom, watch it on television, and often get so into the game that she'd bring dinner up to us in her bedroom so we can continue watching. My next homestay was in Brazil. We stayed in Sao Paulo, which is a very big city. I stayed with one roommate, and we had 2 host fathers. They were within walking distance from the school. It was about 20 minutes, depending on how fast we walked. So that was very convenient because we did have easy access to go right home if we wanted to, so it wasn't the huge process that I had in India or walking up and down a hill in South Africa, so that was very nice. They also took us to their favorite spots within the city. We went samba dancing with them. They drove us around on a rainy day. I got to share many, many great conversations with them. One of my host fathers was an English teacher, so he spoke English fluently, and his partner was learning English, and he often apologized to me for not being able to speak perfect English, which always kind of made me take a step back and say, like, why is he apologizing to me when I'm in his home and I'm not speaking Portuguese? I should be the one apologizing. So that was always an interesting experience, that they were so accommodating and so welcoming to me. So this was the last homestay that I had before returning to my home in the United States for a couple months. And then at the beginning of my second semester, I went to Switzerland, and I stayed with one host family for the majority of about 3.5 months. So this was a very different experience than my first semester, because my first semester I was moving around a lot. Also different from the first semester was that I stayed in this homestay myself, so I didn't have any roommates that were part of my program, so that was also very new. I lived with a host mom, a host dad, and 2 host brothers. My host parents are from England, so they spoke English. However, they've been living in Switzerland for the past 25 years, so both of their sons were born there. And so they all speak French, and they were willing to help me with French because I had to take a French class while I was there, and that's also something that I study here at PC. So they were very accommodating in that aspect, but also willing to engage in many conversations in English, which I found great comfort too, after being away for so long and kind of being thrown back into the process. We lived very close to a train station, about like a 3-minute walk, so I would walk to the train station every day, take about a 30 to 40-minute train ride into the city where my classroom was, and it was also a short walk to the classroom itself. So the trains really were one of my favorite things about Switzerland, because I could put in my headphones, listen to my music, and just watch the mountains across the lake, and it was just absolutely incredible. And so my last homestay was in Morocco. This was the shortest homestay that I had because we were in Morocco for 9 days and we were in and out of the homestay going to stay with the family and then also stay in a rural area. So I was with them for maybe 4 or 5 days in total. I had one roommate from my program, and we lived with a host father, a host mother, and a host sister. The host sister studies languages, so she spoke English fluently. Both of her parents had a little bit of English with them, but then they also spoke French and Arabic. So there was a little bit of miscommunications and stuff, but it was kind of a funny experience to be able to learn from and grow from. We always shared stories. We also bonded over TV there. My host mom had a lot of birds, so she would share a lot of crazy stories about her birds escaping their cages and having to catch them again. So it was always something that we were able to laugh about and enjoy together. And really, overall, I can't speak to any bad experiences that I had with my host families. I was very, very fortunate in that process. Every home that I stayed in, I felt like it was my home, and I treated it as if it was my home. So I felt very embraced. I was part of the family, and they were so wonderful to open their culture and their families to me as well. So thank you. These are just some pictures from some of our travel excursions. But we'll open up to questions after I let Andrew present as well. So thank you.
So I can't use that. All right, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Andrew Connerth. I'm a senior, and similarly to Hannah, I did actually a 3-country comparative program as well my spring semester last year. And I focused on the program on human rights challenges, advocacy, and foundations. The program was with World Learning SIT, and then they bought a branch called IHP, which has this 3-country comparative program that has different trips that go on different sort of themes, and this program similarly was related to specifically human rights, but human rights in a non-Western context. So the 3 countries that I participated in were Nepal, Jordan, and Chile. And I remember first learning about this program when I actually came in on the first day of orientation freshman year. I was at the bar in McPhail's, just for some social programming that was happening that night. And the bartender, who was a senior at the time, he started talking to me about sort of his service experience, and one of the programs that he did was a similar IHP program. And so I was really amazed and really wowed by that sort of kind of story and sort of him really opening up to me on my first day, that I said, I know that when I'm a sophomore, I'm going to be applying to one of those country comparative programs. And when I actually had looked at the roster for what was available for the spring semester of last year, I saw that this one was there. And I'm currently right now a public community service major with a minor in political science. So very much my background is about service. It's about sort of helping and sort of how can I sort of work with communities to be able to tackle issues that we face today. So this program was a no-brainer. I put in my deposit in right away. I started the application right away, and I was able to be accepted along with 30 other students from all over the country as well as all over the world. We had about 4 other students from the program who were based in a non-Western context but did study in the US. So we started actually the orientation off in New York City, and they had opened the floor to say that there's going to be a service component to this program. But how it's going to work is that in each country, there's going to be different teams. We're going to pretty much split the group up into thirds, and you're going to pick a country in which you're going to be doing your service project in. So they titled this the Solidarity Project, which was really interesting. I mean, it's sort of something I kind of didn't expect how they would sort of work up service in this way. But in Nepal, there was a service project. Jordan, there was a service project. And then Chile, there was a service project. And I decided, based on sort of the information that was given about each country and what the project would entail. The project in Nepal was dealing with a women's health nonprofit organization that was working in Bhutanese refugee camps within Nepal. In Jordan, it was working with an organization that was working with Iraqi refugees that are based in Jordan. And then in Chile, the project detailed working with the Mapuche indigenous community. The Mapuche are the largest indigenous peoples within Latin America as of today. And we would be working on a website creation for a specific organization that this Mapuche community was involved with. And so I looked at my sort of skills, what I was talented in, sort of what I felt I could give. And as you'll notice with all these photos, I'm a photographer. So I really said, okay, like I could use my photography expertise possibly to be able to give to the website creation in Chile. And so that's where I decided to go. That's where I decided to sort of sign my name up. And as the program progressed, I had similar homestay experiences like Hannah and Taylor, and in Nepal, the service project went really well. The students that participated in had a really good time working with the country coordinator, who was this guy named Yannick, and he worked with the students on my program to be able to work with this organization that were able to provide a service for about 4 to 5 days. And then when we got to Jordan, things changed around a bit. Pretty extensively and interestingly, actually. So in terms of just like the service component of my program, students started to problematize exactly what we were doing. And specifically the students that were in the Jordan program that were doing the service there were really problematizing exactly what was going on here, because we started to sort of say, how is this service actually benefiting the people that we're trying to work with? Is this service really more just an educational component within our program, or is it actually doing any good? And sort of students actually within the Jordan service program started to do some digging and started to recognize that this program was actually, the service component was actually not really benefiting those refugees, those Iraqi refugees that we're supposed to be working with. And that the organization was only hosting us for that service component because our educational provider, SIT, asked us to. So what happened was about 6 to 7 students actually did some civil disobedience and said, we're not doing this service project here because of the ethical issues with this program. And so we, all 31 of us got together, including the faculty members, including the site coordinators, and we started to sort of kind of unpack exactly what this service experience would be, not only for us students, but also the people that we're actually engaging with, the people that we're supposed to be actually doing a service to. And in Jordan, the project was still carried out by the members who stayed on, but certainly within my own experience, I really started to say that, you know, there's a component of service that is so complicated. It's not just about going and doing this good, but sort of how are we doing this good, and how are we working with these communities in order to actually work with them and actually provide an actual service. So when we had gotten to Chile and it was my turn to be part of this program, we all decided that we weren't going to call it solidarity. We weren't going to call a week's worth of service something that was going to be, you know, us giving to them and us getting something out of it. But rather, you know, we talked with the community. This is actually a picture from the Mapuche community. And we said to them, listen, we have these skills, we have these resources, we have these capabilities. If you want us to come into your community to provide a service, to be able to work with you, we will do that. If you don't want us to come, we understand. And they got back to us and said, okay, please come. You know, we're going to actually have one of you work on a member profile, saying that one of your students knows photography, and that was actually me. So I had this really unique opportunity to not only work with my skill, but do so in a way that was actually benefiting and contributing to this community without sort of me deciding what was best for them. So when we were actually in the Mapuche community for about a week, and one of the first sort of events we did, it was not necessarily about getting into work right away, but it was about sort of building that trust and starting to begin to build a relationship with them. So we participated in an event called Trafkintu, which means exchange. It means equal exchange, and sort of the event is really beautiful because it's different members of the community, different members that are Mapuche and not Mapuche, come together, and they actually give each other different sort of harvests that they've been growing, different trinkets and items that they've been making and whatnot. So there's no monetary exchange as much as it's just an exchange of different goods and resources that they have. So that's how we sort of started to get into this service, was not even doing service right away, but it was saying, let's get to know each other. Let's actually sort of kind of build a sense of why, and sort of like, why are we here and why do we care about this community? So when it was actually sort of my actual turn to actually be part of the service and really do the photography, I went to two different homes, and I was taking profiles of women of the Mapuche organization that we were working with. So this was actually, this is my professor here, and then 3 other students in my program. All the other students that stayed this week, about the 10, 11 of us that stayed, all the other members were just asked to help different houses, different members of this community with whatever work they ask you to do. So it seemed pretty menial. It seemed pretty, you know, what are we actually doing? Like, this doesn't have any very significant impact. But it wasn't a matter of what we thought about it as much as like how the community thought about the work we were doing. And so they were very clearly describing that, like, you're going to be helping pick up chestnuts, and then we're going to cook the chestnuts, and then we're going to be able to eat and talk together about it. So it was very much a different way of looking at sort of service, especially from a Western context, and sort of bringing out into an area that I, you know, wasn't familiar with. When I I got into sort of work within this service, I was tasked with taking member profiles. So I went to this one woman's home, and so I had my other faculty members spoke Spanish. None of these members actually spoke any English too, which was sort of, you know, obviously difficult but understandable. You know, I'm not going to expect them to speak English for me when I don't speak Spanish. So we went to this woman's home, and she said to my professor, who was my interpreter, she said, "Let's go out to the shack out back, and I'm going to make a fire." And so we were able to take a really great set of photos there. And she had said that I don't like actually my photo being taken at all. Ever since my mother died, I really shy away from taking any photos of any kind. But some reason when you two came here today and you came into my home, I had this sort of this spirit of my mother was there, and she said, you know, she pretty much talked to me about taking these photos. And so it was really, really, I had to take a step back and say, oh my gosh, like, this is really amazing. This is something that, obviously, being in a different cultural context, like, there's something that, you know, we wouldn't hear much of here, but like, really respecting that I was walking on very sacred ground in a very sacred relationship was truly absolutely changing in so many ways. So many ways of how I even looked at, like, why am I here? Why am I in this community? But also, like, how I was able to engage my passion with photography in this component of service. So what I had to do after all the photos were taken of the different members, I had to edit them, and I had to make sure that I gave them to the sort of Mapuche coordinator of the community before I left. Because there was this big deal with sort of kind of theft and being able to sort of use this very, very emotional and sort of sacred information, you know, people's stories, people's histories, people's lives, that I wouldn't be taking away from them, you know, if I were just to have left and gone back to Santiago. So I had to make sure that I had to edit all those photos before I left that week, and then make sure I gave them to the coordinator so that way they could use that information. And it was truly, I think, a service experience that I never really expected. It really changed my definition of what it means to be in service. Now, a lot of programs that are offered, whether it's with the school or outside the school, don't really, you know, the service component is optional. It's not necessarily geared into every specific study abroad program you might encounter when you choose to apply, when you choose to look at programs. But certainly having a service component in a study abroad program does add a very beautiful dimension of just how you can work with people. There are a lot of, obviously, ethical issues when it comes to sort of service like this. So definitely looking at programs that sort of provide a work-with relationship and a sort of a reciprocal relationship in which, you know, you're able to work with people and you're not just sort of imparting sort of your views and what you think is the best way or what you think needs to be done for a community is really important to consider. Because I think that as sort of how many times we problematized service and sort of, you know, not only within this program but just in general in terms of like my own life. I definitely, like kind of Taylor said before when she first began, that, you know, we don't regret these programs at all. We don't sort of say that I wish I didn't go. It was truly a life-changing semester, and something that really made me sort of be able to walk away with a sense of, you know, how is service more a part of my life now than ever before. So thank you so much.
I've been doing this a long time, and after listening to the stories and journeys of these three students, my first reaction is, wow. Very impressive stories. So we have a few minutes remaining, and we'd like to open it up to your questions, comments, observations, and to any of the particular students or to myself. So the rest of this time is yours here to take advantage of today. So I'll open it up. Yes.
Did you have to get a lot of shots? I didn't have to get a lot of shots. There are countries listed on the office's website that do detail if you go to specific countries, you do have to get some shots. So I remember, you know, Zika was starting to become a more of an issue within Latin America by the time that I was going. But the office sent me two really important emails just regarding sort of, you know, Zika prevention, making sure you're wearing clothing that's covering your skin, mosquito bites, et cetera, et cetera. So I didn't have to get any shots.
I did have to get a lot of shots. I had gone to South Africa prior to this program, so I got a lot of shots for my first time going to South Africa. So I couldn't even tell you what shots that I got. I don't remember. I did have to get a few more to go on the program just based on like the areas that we were going in each country. So sometimes like it depends on the country, but sometimes it's the area in the country that you're going to. So like if you're in an area that doesn't have any problems, you might not need it. But if you go into more of a rural area or in South Africa, like some of the areas where like there's more of like the national parks and stuff, like you might need different shots. So like I definitely had to get a handful of shots.
I also had to get pills. So I had malaria medication that I took during for my time that I spent in the jungle. And I was supposed to actually take it the whole time I was there, but I don't think my doctor was aware of, like, I lived in a fairly urban setting throughout the majority of my study abroad experience, but I did spend 2 significant weeks in the jungle at different times in my program. So I took malaria medication in preparation for those trips.
1 second. Yeah, the programs we work with are very good at providing that kind of information for students. There's also a travel clinic right here in Providence, so students can get those shots taken care of locally or go back home, consult your local physician, et cetera. So, and usually if you take care of that plenty of time, you'll be fine. Mm-hmm. We rarely have occasions where, well, we have a student right now who's in Tanzania, and she just developed some typhoid fever, and we heard from the program this week, so she got treated, and she's back home with her family, and she's doing well. And all of that. So, you know, you do need to be careful depending on the location, the locale. But overall, students do fine. Sir? I'll just jump in real quick. That will vary a lot by program. So when you're looking at a program, to take a look at what's included. So is that, you know, room and board? And if board, how many meals per week? It may not be all the meals. If you're in a homestay, there may be breakfast and dinner, but you're responsible for lunch. So those are the kinds of things when you're looking at programs to look at carefully in terms of what's included with the program and then what will be out-of-pocket expenses. And so some of these meals, for example, may be out-of-pocket for that. So there, you know, the students can comment in terms of what they did in terms of handling their money.
For me, because I stayed with homestays in every country, we were guaranteed breakfast and dinner with the homestays, and for lunch we had a stipend. So they gave us cash. They gave us cash in the currency of the place that we were in order to use. So for me, I utilized that before exchanging money or using a credit card or a debit card. So like that was my initial like use of the money. Once I ran out of that, then I had to like fall back on my own sort of resources. So some people would use credit cards. Definitely check where your credit cards work in the country, in the world, because some countries don't accept certain credit cards. Some people use debit cards. Of course, you have to pay attention to different fees and stuff that go on credit cards and debit cards when taking out money, when exchanging money. So like there is kind of like a loss in like that sort of process and different fees that you have to kind of deal with. But for me, like it was a great asset to be able to have the stipends to rely on and really use that money until I needed to figure things out for myself. But like the programs, they definitely helped us in saying like this is a good place to go. You're not like don't do it at like the airport, like you're gonna lose money in that sort of transaction. So like they'll kind of, for my programs specifically, like they helped navigate that for us. So like I can't speak to all programs, but like SIT did a good job with that.
What about the overall cost of the study abroad you did?
Okay, so that's, some of that information is in your brochures. You can read that a little bit later, but I'll just say this. We are what we call a homeschool tuition institution, college. So students pay their tuition as if they were coming to PC. So they're invoiced by the college as they would for their tuition normally. There's also a study abroad fee that the college charges for the semester or year that students are away. Then the particular program will invoice you for the room and board portion or insurance or other matters related to the program. So you'll receive 2 invoices that semester, one from the college for the usual tuition, and then one from the program provider itself for the other related expenses for the program on that. Yeah.
If I could add something onto that, Dean
Sure.
Adrian. Something that's awesome about PC that not necessarily every university does is that if you're receiving an academic scholarship, that money does carry over into your fees for when you are paying the homeschool tuition policy. So that's really important for those of us who receive any type of aid that does transfer, which is nice to know.
That's right, financial aid portability carries for study abroad as well, absolutely. Sir? We work primarily exclusively with third-party program providers, and that's for the value added that they bring to the table. So for example, there'll be an orientation program, guaranteed housing for our students. There's an on-site director. So we rely on that to make sure that our students are really well taken care of. Number one, we know they're safe. So for example, this week there were 2 earthquakes in Italy, an hour apart or so from one another. And we work with a provider there for our PC in Rome program. Well, within 10 minutes, they had all the students accounted for. Now, if I had to do that from 5,000 miles away on my own in a direct enrollment, that might have taken me a day. So I was able to contact all the parents the next morning with an email, said, we know your son and daughter is safe. Hopefully they have reached you by now, they were told to, and we want to make sure just to reassure you that everyone's fine. So this is why we work primarily with providers for the value added and for the safety and well-being of the students and for the peace of mind. I hope that brings not only to the college, but to the families themselves primarily. So that's why we work with them, yeah. Sir? No, there are many other options, yeah. It just happened to be that they had 3 homestays here, so we kind of stacked the deck today, maybe. But frankly, very few students usually opt for homestays. Most programs will have a variety of housing options. So that could be living with other students in apartments. It could be a homestay. It could be living in an apartment building with other families from that host country. So we have it, like in Rome, we have student apartments, but they're in a regular apartment building. So your neighbors will be Italians, for example, on that. So most programs will have 2, 3, or 4 different housing options. In some programs, we approve which options students can use. And so we want to try to encourage immersion more so than just Americans living together. And so we try to mix that up a little bit to try to encourage that in the housing options. But this was a little bit extreme here today in terms of it all happened to be homestays. But in fact, not that many students tend to choose homestays for a variety of reasons. But we would like to encourage them to do so, yeah, on that. Good question. In fact, they had multiple homestays, my God. That's very good, yeah. Other questions here?
Gary.
I'm sorry? Yeah, Maymester programs. These are programs that are led by PC faculty. So they usually start right the day after graduation takes place. So typically the students are on campus for the first week, intensive classes, all day, 9 to 5. And then they leave the second week for the international component of the course. And they could be gone for 10 days, 2 weeks. So we're running next summer, for example, we have a program that's been running in Ghana for several years. We have a group that's going to Japan. They've been running that every other year. And I forget which other place we had.
Andrew's been to Japan if he wants to talk a little
Yeah,
bit about
That's
that.
right. You did the Japan one?
I
Okay.
did the Japan Maymester 2 years ago after my my freshman year, and it's really cool because it offers a nice alternative if students don't feel like they could do a semester abroad, they don't feel like they could do 2 semesters abroad, that the Maymester and summer programs do offer really nice flexibility to be able to have that international experience without the huge commitment of a semester to give it up with. I know that I know some students, friends of mine, that they can't do like a 2-semester or like during the school year international program, so therefore they'll do a summer program or they'll do a Maymester. And it's really nice too because how the costs sort of add up for the Maymester, you really get so much out of it. So I went on the Japan Maymester, never had any idea that I would ever go to Japan, but it had a photography component, believe it or not, that really interests me. And it was also a really cool group of professors. It was tri-taught. And going with the program and going to Japan with this program, I think I was able to get so much more out of the experience than if I were to go alone, if I were to even study abroad there myself, because they were, experts, and we had a educational component with it as well. So you do take a class. It counts for, I think this class was 4 credits. And so you do get that educational component, but it really matches nicely with your travel experience and sort of with what you're actually interacting with.
Yeah, those are led by PC faculty, so those are very attractive to a lot of students who want to work with faculty, specifically on those programs. So, and this, it allows you to get back in time. You still would get a summer job if you want, or a summer internship, because usually you're back by the first week of June or so. So you still have a good stretch of the summer in front of you to do other things. So it's really helpful for students in that way, the way it's packaged. Yeah. Okay, well, listen, I want to thank you, everyone, for coming here today, and I hope the students who are here today will really want to study abroad as a result of what you've heard from our 3 students here. We're going to stick around for a few more minutes, so feel free to come up, ask individual questions, perhaps, and thanks again so much for being here today.
Thank you.
And thank you for our students.